Hey everyone, I'm Ross, and I only play action games.
Hi, Ross.
Look, I know that you know that I'm not the biggest fan of turn-based combat. I've never really been too keen on the waiting and general lack of connection to the characters on screen. Those of you who are even slightly familiar with my channel should know that I'm unapologetically all about the action games. If I'm not in the enemy's face with a robust arsenal of moves to utilize and dominate them, I'd probably rather be doing something else. But it wasn't always this way. When I was younger, there was nothing I loved more than watching my brother play games. I was his right-hand man most of the time, flipping through strategy guides, finding what he needed or might need to know, and keeping an eye on the screen for things he might have missed. And what did my brother love more than long RPGs? Farting in my face probably ranks pretty high up there, but I'm pretty sure he still likes long RPGs more. Pokemon was of course the big one that we both fell in love with. We would always get both versions of the current release and help each other out by trading and all of that nonsense, but we know this story already. However, as we got older, we grew in separate directions. The games we played were getting progressively dissimilar every passing year, until the last turn-based RPG I would play for some time came into our lives. Pokemon Diamond and Pokemon Pearl. I loved Pokemon Diamond, but after it was over, I can't think of another turn-based game that I fully played through. Of course I still played quote-unquote JRPGs, since there are plenty of action games with RPG mechanics that were made in Japan, but never a traditional one, never a real one. My brother had a habit of taking the old GameStop gamble and trying RPGs with no real knowledge of their actual quality. Enchanted Arms, Blue Dragon, etc. But this gamble paid off for him one time in the form of Dragon Quest VIII Journey of the Cursed King. I vividly remember being with him as he entered the castle and faced off with Dulmagus, and so many other great moments from that game. It was enough to make him a lifelong Dragon Quest fan. He tells me all about them whenever a new one releases and is never turned away by how notoriously long the games are. But I would never have anything to contribute back to that conversation. I was too busy thinking about, get ready.
I am smart, and I'm self-smarted, basically, by myself. I've self-learned myself. People say books in college are for to be to make you smarter, but they can also be for to be to get you dead, which is what could have happened to me.
So, after the 11th entry in the Dragon Quest series released and started getting amazing reviews, my brother told me that squid boss was actually really easy despite Dunking making it seem otherwise, and Some Call Me Johnny started going through his childhood RPGs, I started to think. There are RPGs out there that are made for novices like me, people who don't know the first thing about them. I just made a video about Dark Souls 3 encouraging people to look to the internet if they need help, and to say f*** those who would put you down for doing so. Let's do this, I thought. Let's finally take on an RPG after all these years. So, I started thinking and asking around, which of these beginner-friendly RPGs do I start with? I was really leaning towards The Thousand Year Door, another game that I co-piloted with my brother back in the day. But, obviously, I went with Dragon Quest XI-S, Echoes of an... Oh my god, what a name. But obviously, I went with Dragon Quest XI-S, Echoes of an Elusive Age Definitive Edition. I pressed the start button on Tuesday, June 1st, and after almost 70 hours of playtime, I watched the last set of credits roll on Sunday, August 29th. It was one hell of a journey, but one that I am very glad to have taken. I don't want to brag, but I think I made the best call in choosing my first RPG. But now, I want to see if I can interest any of you in this game as well, based on my own experiences. And you did just hear me say 70 hours a moment ago. This game is an investment. Not really money-wise because I got it on sale, but it's a time investment. The game is broken up into 3 acts, essentially, each taking around 20 to 25 hours to get through a piece. If I was to do a super simple breakdown of the story, it would sound something along the lines of the chosen luminary sets out on a journey to fulfill his destiny by destroying the Dark One. That's an enormous oversimplification of it, but I wouldn't want to ruin the narrative for someone should they have the interest in playing this for themselves. So I'll do this instead because I do want to share my thoughts on the story with you all, and make this a complete collection of my thoughts on this game. If you're on the fence about giving this one a rip for yourself, skip to the gameplay section of this video using the chapter selection in the description, or you can just use the time code on the screen right now. If it sounds like something that interests you after that, then that's fantastic. I hope you have a great time playing. But if it doesn't sound like it piques your interest, then you can go back and watch the story spoilers if you care to, and I'm also not promising that you won't see some things toward the end of the game when I'm talking about everything else, so proceed at your own risk. On a dark night in the land of Erdrea, kings from the four corners of the world meet to discuss the birth of a new luminary, a being who is selected by the World Tree, the source of all of Erdrea's life force, when the need for a hero is required. But that need comes a lot sooner than expected when the castle is attacked by monsters. The boy's mother has no choice but to take him far away from the castle along with this unknown girl, sacrificing her own life to save the two children. The next morning, the child is found by this old man who adopts the orphan into his family. Years pass and the boy spends his youth in the small town of Cobblestone, but the day for a town tradition has come as he and his childhood friend Gemma are to climb to the top of this big mountain as a coming of age ceremony. I want to point out how funny I find it that this town makes young adults climb a dangerous mountain to, quote, give praise to the spirit of the land and tell us how you like the view. But Gemma literally still has an apron on. Is this dangerous ceremony a big deal or not? Anyway, at the top of the mountain, they're both attacked by a ferocious monster with Gemma poised to fall to her death. But suddenly, the mark on Hero's hand begins to glow, with the monster being struck down by a bolt of lightning shortly afterwards. The two climb down and Amber, the old man's daughter and Hero's adoptive mother, explains that her father must have been right. That this dopey dude is indeed the reincarnation of the Luminary. But she has no idea what that means, so she sends him off to the castle of Heliodor the next morning to ask the king what he knows. After heading straight to the castle throne room, King Carnelian and his two right-hand knights, Sir Hendrik and Sir Jasper, await. After confirming his hand to house the Mark of Light indeed, Carnelian asks what village was responsible for raising the sacred luminary, sending Jasper out the door with a squad of Kingsmen as Hero is approached by Hendrik. After being accused of harboring some wicked scheme, he's cast into the castle's dungeon. Hendrik leaves the so-called Darkspawn to rot in his cell, but the inmate just next door is surprised to hear that the luminary is right next to him, and he proceeds to do what any rational person would do. And after some fun sewer escapades, the pair finally get the chance to exchange names.
The name's Eric, by the way.
Eric is really cool. After resting up outside the castle, Hero helps Eric pay a visit to his old partner in crime, Dirk. There was some bad blood initially as Eric thought Dirk sold him out and made off with this orb that they both worked really hard to steal from the king, but that wasn't quite the case as he was busy paying off guards to help Eric escape jail. But Dirk tells them that the King's Barrel will be where they can find Eric's orb, so off they go. As a first party member, I really love Eric. He might have been in jail, but you can tell he's not even close to being a bad guy. And side note, this guy's voice would be a great fit for Sonic the Hedgehog.
The sewers, huh? Well, there must be a way out somewhere. Lead the way. I got your back.
If we stand and fight, we're dead. Let's get the heck out of here.
Just thought it was interesting. On the way to the King's Barrel, the pair make a quick detour to Cobblestone where Hero sees a vision of the past, speaking with his younger self, Gemma, and his grandfather. The old man recognizes him immediately, seeing that he has quite the journey to go on, and tells him to dig in front of a specific rock at the waterfalls outside of town. After the vision fades, he and Eric see that Jasper made good on his word to the king and destroyed the entire town. The old man buried a letter on the day that he met the vision of Hero's future self. Time travel, don't think about it. The box also contains a keystone and instructions to take it to the door of departure to the east for more answers. With the King's Barrel and its monsters thwarted, Eric finally reclaims his orb and the two make their way eastward. With the door of departure in sight, Hendrik and his soldiers finally catch up to our heroes. The two nearly get caught but escape just in the nick of time thanks to Eric. After catching their breath in the nearby city of Hotto, they run into this little girl arguing with a gentleman. This is Veronica and she's looking for her sister. She's a bit of a hothead and always seems to be ready to start an argument. She means well, but frankly, she's an ass. And Eric certainly doesn't help the situation with the constant quippy remarks on her size. Turns out she and her sister were kidnapped by monsters, and she was the only one able to escape. Thus, she recruits Hiro and Eric to accompany her in rescuing her sister. After taking to a nearby dungeon, the group stumbles across Veronica's sister Serena, who was sleeping on the floor. And I find it really funny that this happened.
Serena, wake up! It's me, Veronica.
Veronica? Is that really you?
How did you know it was me?
Wow! You're an idiot!
But yes, these two are actually twins. The monsters who captured them were draining people of their magical power. However, Veronica fought back so much that somehow they drained her age instead of her magic.
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
And it just so happens that she brought the boys here to help her beat the hell out of the monsters in hopes they'll fix her height problem. On the other side of the door, the monster Jarvis spills his plan for draining the magic of humans in preparation for the Lord of Shadow's eventual return. Just then, the group's cover is blown and they have to resort to the best way of solving any problem. After everyone is done throwing hands, Veronica regains her magical abilities, but unfortunately keeps her stature. The twins then find it the right opportunity to reveal that they are children of Arborea, a sacred town that raises children in the hopes of being protectors of the Luminary should one ever need to return. They tell of an Arborean legend prophesizing that the return of the Dark One will be circumvented by Yggdrasil's chosen Luminary. Thus, our heroes set off to find a way up to Yggdrasil and to find out why the Luminary was reincarnated in the first place. But seeing as how it's a floating island in the middle of the sky, it won't be a simple task. That's when Eric has the idea to ask one of his dirty-nosed pals, who luckily owes him a favor. The team is encouraged to head to Gallopolis, where a branch of Yggdrasil is being kept. After marching right up to a seemingly stressed-out Sultan, the prince barges in, announcing that his training is complete, and he promises to not let his father down at tomorrow's big race, but not before stopping to give Hiro the f**k-me eyes. He tells the eccentric prince why they've come, and the prince asks to discuss a deal at tonight's circus. So Prince Ferris here wants to impress his father at the big important race, but he sucks at everything. Thus a deal is made for Hiro to take his place and impress everyone in return for the branch, which he calls the Rainbow. Of course it goes well, but just as Ferris is about to ask his father for the Rainbow, a guard informs the room that a terrible monster has been wreaking havoc in the desert adjacent to the city. The Sultan then dispatches his finest men, led by Ferris, to take care of it since he proved himself at the race. But remember, Ferris sucks at everything. So of course the group goes into the desert with the prince and the men, and I just love how tone deaf and oblivious Ferris is as a character.
For Gallopolis!
For Gallopolis.
Yeah! Yeah!
It honestly cracks me up. Before leaving, the circus performer from the night before overheard the conversation and wants in on the monster hunt. This is Sylvando, or as I like to call him, the best character in the game. It's not because he has some amazingly emotional arc or anything, it's a combination of his voice actor giving an unbelievably entertaining performance, and the way he's written to be this spicy sweet warrior who's extremely capable and wise. I'm just always entertained when he's on screen. Anyway, they find the monster, kill the monster, and Sylvando badgers the kid about lying to everyone in the kingdom, to which Ferris replies, As they drag the monster back into the city, it breaks loose, with Sylvando giving Ferris the words he needs to actually pull through and be a hero in front of his people before stepping in himself. After the excitement, Ferris comes clean about it all and confesses to receiving help from the group. The Sultan is grateful, but regretfully explains that the Rainbow was sold to a merchant from Gondolia. As the group begins to head that way, Sylvando pleads to join the group in hopes of bringing joy to the rest of the world. And as fate would have it, Sylvando owns a ship that's docked in Gondolia. But as fate would also have it, Sir Jasper and his brigade of soldiers are there as well. The gang takes them head on, but narrowly escape with their lives thanks to Sylvando and his salty stallion. I didn't like saying that sentence. After escaping the soldiers and the sea itself, we're introduced to Sylvando's right-hand man, Dave. He had caught wind of something matching the Rainbow's description being bought and taken to the Zvardrus region. Not wasting any time, the crew sails over and finds themselves in the city of Octagonia, where the Rainbow is found to be the prize of a martial arts competition. The party then gets split up due to the rules of the tournament choosing partners randomly. Hero is paired with the previous champion, Vince Vanquish, who seems to be afflicted with Brock syndrome. The two fight their way up to the top and eventually face off with this cute girl and older gentleman who have been making a name for themselves in the ring. But in the middle of the fight, the two get distracted by the mark of the luminary on Hero's hand. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Vince catches them both off guard. But as they're celebrating the victory, Vince falls to the ground grasping his chest. The morning after, the old man, Rab, corrals the group and asks them if they can help him find his partner Jade, as she's gone missing. After exploring a nearby cave system, we see Vince carrying Jade into the middle of this cavern and offering her to this awful monster. The party shows up just in time and catches Vince red-handed. Rab cracks the case and accuses Vince of kidnapping the runner-ups from the tournament every year and feeding them to this creature. And in return, the monster shares its power with Vince through the vials of its essence that he can be seen downing before each fight. After defeating the monster and rescuing Vince, the two walk out to finally receive their prizes, but Vince issues a surprise challenge to Hero, and the winner will take all. But this time, a clean fight with no spider monster juice, you freak. It doesn't take long for a winner to be decided, and in fact, it was pretty brutal. It's really touching though, because it was obviously a hard call to make for Vince, but the audience still loved him for always hitting people to entertain them, I guess. But uh-oh, it looks like Rab and Jade made off with the Rainbow and want Hero to meet them in the ruins of Dundrasil. After fighting through the ruins of the old castle, the party meets up with Rab, who's reminiscing on the glory that used to be the kingdom of Dundrasil. He knows this because it was his kingdom at one point. Rab reveals that he was the old king of Dundrasil, father to the princess and father-in-law to the last king, Hero's parents. Rab silently sobs as he reassures the grave of the king and queen that he found their son at long last. He finally found his long-lost grandson. This was one of the few moments that really got to me, and it really hits harder after watching it back. Jade turns out to be the long-lost princess of Helidor, King Carnelian's daughter. In her youth, Jade would often visit Dundrasil Castle and really took a liking to the queen, or Eleanor. She was like a second mother, so in a way, Jade thinks of Hero as a little brother. She was also the young girl that was with Queen Eleanor on the night that the monsters attacked. But this tearful reunion is cut short as Hendrik and his patrol back Hero off of a cliff, with Jade rocketing towards him, reassuring that she won't let him go again. The two find refuge in a cabin before heading out the following morning to regroup with the others, butting heads with Hendrik once more as he pleads with Jade to come home and leave the Darkspawn to him. Only she says, nah, and jacks his whip. Back with the group, Rab claims that the Dark One, the puppet master that's behind everything, is none other than Mordegon. So with the Rainbow in hand and two of the World Tree's orbs already in their possession, the goal is to find the remaining orbs and make their way towards Yggdrasil. So that's exactly what happened. From here, the story takes more of an episodic approach, helping a mermaid find her love, rescuing a town from a wall, rescuing a town from an ice witch. You get the idea. You take part in these mini stories to get the orbs, with the overall plot only advancing very minimally as you find them. There are a few tidbits like how Jasper is actually trying to get Hendrik killed for unknown reasons, but those are just there to set up future events. Anyway, after making a quick pit stop in Serena and Veronica's hometown to learn the history of Erdrea, the connections to Dragon Quest III start coming into light. Hero is the reincarnation of the Luminary from that game, and it's kinda weird that the protagonist from 3 is named Erdrick and the man from the flashback's name is Erdwin, but they're clearly the same guy, but whatever. With Veronica and Serena also being the reincarnation of his companion, Serenica. See what they did with the names there? Yeah, clever. After the history lesson, our heroes make a beeline to the altar of Yggdrasil. And after arriving, they use the power of the orbs to activate a magical walkway all the way up to Yggdrasil. But oh my god, there are no handrails on that thing. I'm not afraid of heights or anything, but that's too much. In the heart of the tree, the Sword of Light awaits, the only weapon capable of vanquishing Mordegon. And the only one capable of wielding it is the Luminary. Just as Hero steps closer, a dark magical blast takes him out. Jasper approaches and uses his newfound power to nearly kill the whole party and take the Sword of Light for himself, but not before being stopped by a familiar voice. Hendrik demands that Jasper stop and prepares to strike him down before getting the very same treatment by King Carnelian. But oh no, it wasn't King Carnelian, it was Mordegon! The big man finally reveals himself, and what a first impression he makes, as he's been playing everyone like fiddles since the beginning, masquerading as King Carnelian. His first order of business is to rip the power of the Luminary straight out of Hero and claim the Sword of Light for himself, transforming it into something that would make any Soul Calibur character in the vicinity jealous. The Sword of Darkness is born, with it being used to destroy Yggdrasil in one swift action, basically causing the end of the world. Thus concludes Act 1. Oh yeah, we're only a third of the way through here. The next section of the game is dedicated to giving some context on what Sylvando, Eric, Rab, and Jade do after the World Tree falls. These little mini stories are actually really cool. Sylvando makes a traveling circus to keep making people smile, Eric finds himself trapped in a monster prison and is helped by the second greatest character in the game, Elijah.
Oh dear, it looks like you're a little battered and bruised. But I can help. Here you go.
But as he's about to escape, he gets cornered by one of Mordegon's generals, or Spectral Sentinels as they're called. Elijah isn't who he claimed to be, however, revealing that he's actually the seer that gave Eric the premonition to wait in his jail cell for the Luminary to appear so he could help him escape. The being gives our lovable thief the choice to call upon a great power that will help him escape, but at the cost of the memory of his friends and anything else he holds dear. It was one of the most touching moments, not gonna lie.
It's terrible! Awful! A complete splatter!
Shut up, Elijah! I'm having a moment! Rab gets one more vision of life back in Dundrasil before it went down the toilet, but it was simply an illusion by his old master, used to help him obtain a power great enough to defeat Mordegon. And Jade gets turned into a mind-controlled Playboy bunny by one of the Spectral Sentinels. Our poor boy Hero was hidden under the sea disguised as a fish thanks to some assistance from the mermaids the gang helped out earlier. The Queen of the Mermaids shows that the land and its people have been without a true hero for quite a while.
Please, help me.
I found that to be pretty funny, but there has been a new hero trying their best to make the world right after the incident at the World Tree. But their time has been cut short by one of the Spectral Sentinels as he breaks through and invades the underwater city, narrowly missing our special little fish. After making it back to the surface with some assistance from this nice fisherman, Hero takes the Mermaid Queen's advice and heads off to find his friends. But a quick pit stop at the old stomping grounds is in order. Cobblestone is actually surviving thanks to a remorseful King Carnelian and his guard. The poor man claims that he doesn't remember a thing from the last few years Mordegon has had control of his body. Heliodor Castle was taken over by monsters when hell broke loose, so he came to the nearest town to seek refuge. The very same town that Mordegon used him to attack and burn down, so I'm sure that was an awkward conversation. But he and the new hero of the land, Sir Hendrik, have been rebuilding and making up for their misdeeds. The king tasks Hero and Hendrik on an infiltration mission up through the sewer system to take down the new owner of Heliodor Castle, which turns out to be Jasper. Of course it's Jasper. But the two former comrades have the whole "I hate you because you betrayed me" and "Did you ever realize that I wasn't happy being in second place?" blah blah blah. Jasper summons a Spectral Sentinel, they defeat him, and curiously out pops one of Yggdrasil's orbs. The two get back to camp with a new day starting to peek around the corner, with Hero and Hendrik making amends, and the stoic knight pledging his allegiance to the Luminary. And from here, the two of them travel across Erdrea, picking up the old gang where we left them in their own adventures. Rab learns some new skills from his old master. Sylvando is hesitant to leave his new circus alone, but he reconvenes with his father who hasn't seen him in years to look after and train them. There's a fairly heartwarming episode where the gang frees the tormented soul of the king of Dundrasil, with Hero getting to see the day that his family's castle was destroyed, even witnessing Mordegon's possession of King Carnelian, and eventually his own father's death. Then they pick up Jade from her mind prison atop Octagonia, find Eric as a stowaway on Sylvando's ship, all the while defeating the Spectral Sentinels at the end of each of these episodes, until they finally begin to make their way back to Arborea after catching wind that some sort of flying contraption lies dormant there, but not before they're attacked by a dragon and saved at the last minute by the returning Serena. However, there seems to be a noticeable lack of an annoying child running around with her. Serena has lost Veronica and is headed home in the hopes that Veronica had the same idea after they were separated. The group accepts Serena with open arms and they head up the mountain to find their missing friend. And after leading them to one of their favorite spots as kids, Serena finds Veronica, but it's too little too late. The group sees a vision of the moments before Yggdrasil fell and Veronica using all of her power to warp the others to safety, sacrificing herself for the hope that one day her friends will reunite and stop Mordegon. That night, a heartbroken Serena realizes that she has to now finish the journey that she and her sister started, taking the remainder of Veronica's power and giving herself a fresh start, which Gotta say, this was a really special moment. You really feel for Serena here, and it makes you see her in a whole new way. She was always this timid, shy healer girl, but now she comes across as a much more confident and determined version of herself. The gang then receives this special flute, allowing them to call upon the Luminary's flying whale, Cetacea. With Shamu's help, the party travels to the floating island of the Watchers, a race of Majin Buu looking dudes who have observed and kept records of the land since the beginning of time, learning that to defeat the Dark One like the original heroes, they will need to forge another Sword of Light to pierce the darkness surrounding Morrigan's castle. So they get down to work and find everything they need to do so. After they all pitch in and get a good crack at the old thing, a new Sword of Light is created. And with the last of the Spectral Sentinels defeated at the castle door, they march right up to the top, have one last little talk with Jasper before he's defeated, and confront Morrigan. After a rather easy fight, they smack him to the ground, restoring Yggdrasil and making everyone happy again. Well, except for all the people around the world that were killed by Morrigan over the course of his reign. But the credits roll. That's only Act 2. I know, it's crazy, but the next one isn't as long, I promise. The gang all meet back in Arborea to celebrate the victory they worked so hard to make possible, but they catch wind of something having fallen near Dundrasil. They rush over to find the ruins of one of the Watchers' homes, with detailed paintings describing a tower dedicated to maintaining the flow of time. So they fly over to a tower Eric mentions fits the description, and of course, it's correct. Oh yeah, these little guys. Okay. I didn't really know how to fit them into the story, but in the definitive edition of the game, you have access to an entire adventure-spanning side quest involving Tickington. Basically, these little creatures are responsible for the flow of time. You find them in the world and they unlock the next steps in this very elaborate quest that takes place in sections from all the mainline Dragon Quest games. It's pretty cool. Anyways, after entering this tower and climbing to the top, this being known as the Timekeeper informs the group that Hero can be sent back to the moment before Yggdrasil fell and stop Morrigan from ever destroying anything. But only one person can travel back due to how the spell works. So he says his goodbyes to the people he's been through so much with, sacrifices the Sword of Light they just finished making, and sets off to make a better future. Or past, I guess, whatever, timeline. But then, just as we know, he does exactly that. Hero reaches for the original sword, blocks Jasper's sneak attack, stops him with the original Sword of Darkness that he brought back. Now with something greater than Jasper's own power in hand, the gang strike him down, surprising the returning disguised Morrigan, who has no choice but to play the part. The phony king then hosts a party in honor of the Luminary, claiming to have been brainwashed by Jasper. But once a snake, always a snake. That night, Morrigan makes his last attempt to take the sword back, but is caught red-handed, revealing his true form, getting cornered by the party in the middle of the throne room, and then finally defeated once and for all. The gang all take a well-needed breather because it's still probably like 4 a.m. I'd want to go back to bed, I know that much. But as Hero sleeps, an odd-looking Tockle appears and begins walking towards the door. This little guy has actually been seen several times throughout the game, even being the first thing that's focused on in the opening cutscene. The next morning, everyone is gathered in the throne room when knights rush in and plead for everyone to come outside. The dark Tockle raises its tentacle things to the sky, bringing the floating prison Erdwin's lantern towards the ground, causing it to crash open and free the true Dark One, Kalasmos. Erdwin's lantern is another element that gets its fair share of screen time and word of mouth throughout the game, but I had no idea what it was at the time, so I didn't pay it any attention. In the original timeline, Morrigan actually swoops in as Kalasmos is about to be released and destroys his prison and him in an instant, so he couldn't challenge his power. But now, with Morrigan dead, the true evil has finally awakened, Kalasmos. And he straight up has the head of Jiren and the body of Cell. That's all I could think of when I look at him, and I know you do too. Don't try to hide it. It's f***ing Jiren and Cell. After running into the seer again, she informs them of the trials they will need to overcome in order to defeat Kalasmos. They get Cetacea some new duds. They also learn more about the heroes from Dragon Quest III, like how the wizard betrayed the rest of the group along with killing Erdwin after Kalasmos was defeated. Serenica, stricken with grief, then took the Sword of Light and sealed Kalasmos away within Erdwin's lantern. And with nothing left to do, she attempted to undo the mistakes of her time, but was unable. Thankfully, the Tockle saw it fit that they have a new queen, turning Serenica into the Timekeeper. And the warrior Drustin used his spirit to create trials in hope of training the next luminary. So after besting these trials, the heroes head off to face Kalasmos, and they finish the final ultimate evil off in a pretty low-key fashion thanks to the Sword of Light. After peace is finally restored, Hero returns to the tower and restores Serenica to her original form, allowing her to return to her time and be reunited with Erdwin. After things calm down, Hero goes with Serena and Veronica to return the Sword of Light to its rightful home, in the heart of Yggdrasil, ending Dragon Quest XI. So yeah, a pretty baseline setup, but I think it works. The whole chosen one destined to stop the ultimate evil thing is a bit overdone, but I think there's enough behind it here to not be a problem. Most notably, the characters. I love Eric's whole story. Even if I think he got his memory back a bit too easily, I still felt something when he had to make the decision to sacrifice them. Veronica is alright. It sort of feels like she's only really there to give Serena's character arc a kick in the right direction after her death. You really only feel like she's a new person after taking on Veronica's responsibilities. Especially in battles too, because it was like having two characters rolled into one super character at the end of the second act. Sylvando is just super entertaining to observe. He isn't the most compelling on his own, but he's perfect for others to bounce off of. Rab had a whole lot more going on than I thought initially. After the game shows you so much of how he loved his kingdom and his new family, just to have it all taken away from him, and the constant visions always haunting him, it's no wonder he's so protective of Hero since he's the only thing he has left to hang on to from that time in his life. Hendrik was the surprise 8th character and was on the enemy side throughout the whole first act of the game, meaning you really observe his development after the fact. When he switches sides and has to realize he was in the wrong the whole time, you get a genuine feel for his humility and desire to make it right. It's a little one note, but serviceable. I really never warmed up to Jade though. She doesn't seem to have any faults, therefore nothing to facilitate any growth. She hates her dad King Carnelian, but she really doesn't. Since the last time Jade saw him, he was 100% Carnelian. It was after she and Lady Eleanor escaped with Hero that Morrigan possessed him, so the only thing she would really have issues with would be his actions that she witnessed from afar. She presumably never interacted with him after that day until Morrigan was called out in the second timeline. She mentions harboring some guilt of letting Hero get away from her on the night that they escaped, but it wasn't her fault in the slightest. Whatever. At least she's a cutie. And it's been said to death, but silent protagonists are lame. I get it, it's supposed to be an insert for the player, but this dude is a dork. He just stands there, has the dopiest looks on his face, and sounds like a toddler who doesn't know how to make words yet.
Here you are. Whoa.
What do you say? We conduct a series of tests to determine the extent of his sophistication.
I just wish he had a proper voice. I know it's Dragon Quest tradition at this point, but I never got used to it. And I'm sorry about this plot summary being so long, but I really wanted to make this a full collection of my thoughts. And if I gave you the bare minimum, I don't think that would be a good reflection on my real feelings toward the narrative. But I do want your feedback if you watched it and enjoyed it, watched it and thought it was boring, or just skipped it entirely. I'd love to know for future reference in the comments below. But anyway, what about the part of the game that I'm always far more excited about? The actual game. As you should be aware, we have ourselves a turn-based RPG, meaning that you take control of a team of characters that perform selected actions when it's their turn. Characters can perform a basic attack with whatever weapon they have equipped, cast any spells they've learned at the cost of some magic meter, and use any abilities they've learned as well. The frequency of a character's turn is based on their agility stat, so someone like Eric is usually the first party member to act, while Rab is typically stuck going last. This also makes a great difference when you're choosing what weapons you'll want each party member to wield. There's a wide variety of weapons for each character to choose from, and some characters can even wield the same type of weapon, but you should try and avoid covering the same class twice, as it's better to have more varied coverage. As I was doing my research for this game, I learned that the hero is the only party member who can use greatswords, so I made him my heaviest hitter. But I remembered how useful boomerangs were in Dragon Quest VIII and wanted to get someone in my party who could use them. Thankfully, Eric filled that role perfectly. Serena and Veronica were better left as the wand and staff users respectively. Sylvando was able to wield whips, which I also remember being great in VIII. I focused Jade on her fisticuffs tree, and Rab was left to be an offensive mage. Different characters are good for different things, like Serena is the obvious healer but doesn't really excel in dealing damage herself. Sylvando can be a great asset for chipping away enemy health, but also makes for a great support character, potentially coming in clutch with emergency healing and buffing other party members when they need to hit harder. For the longest time, I thought you could only have a party of 4 characters in a battle at any given time, and while that's mostly true, it turns out you can swap party members in and out during any of your party members' turns. If it's the person you're swapping out's turn, then they'll obviously lose that turn, but this can make for some really great strategies. One of the most tried and true methods for winning me encounters was to swap in Hero and have someone buff him up twice, use the Unbridled Blade ability, and watch those numbers fly. Or how about using Veronica's Channel Anger spell to double her magic attack power and then funnel all her MP into the almighty magic burst? Or Eric's Divide skill, which creates 3 copies of himself. Pick an ability like Double Down, a big damage boomerang move that hits every enemy on the field twice already, and just look at that damage output, it's disgustingly beautiful. And on top of that, there are pep powers that each character can perform together, essentially team attacks that can deal big damage and have other effects. I didn't really rely on the pep state though, it was a little too random to work it into strategies normally. It was more of a cool if it happens, but nothing to plan around. Building the characters up, choosing their weapons, and formulating strategies was surprisingly engaging. And I also wasn't stressing out thinking I've spec'd into the wrong weapons or trees because 1, every weapon for every character seems to be viable from what I gather, and 2, you can completely respec your characters at any time at any save point for the low cost of 20 gold per skill panel. So if you're having trouble with a boss and think that a different weapon might make the fight easier, then it's as simple as pressing a button. And you could even save the game and reload the save if it isn't any better. No penalty at all. But if I'm being honest, I don't think you'll have much trouble as it is. While Dragon Quest XI is certainly no walk in the park towards the end of Act 3, I don't think I ever got a game over at any other point in the playthrough. Things were pretty smooth as far as pacing goes. I stopped to fight my fair share of monsters, even some repeats, because I did not want to get caught having to grind, and it worked perfectly for the most part. The bosses kept me on my toes, but I was never underprepared. The same strategy won me just about every fight as long as I kept the party healed up. Plus, there were always save points that refilled my health and magic around every corner, meaning that firing those hard-hitting moves off willy-nilly on small fries wasn't a concern. Consumable items like potions and ethers are present, but they never really became must-haves for me. Mainly because I forget to give them to my characters, because each of the characters have separate inventories and the group can't pull from the big item bag during combat. They only have their limited item selection. This also means that you can have characters potentially carry 2 different kinds of weapons in combat and make for an even more diverse party. But these percentage-based healing spells become so utterly helpful at the end of the game that the one-use items that recover 90 or a little more HP became more of a hassle to make sure I have equipped. And in the super specific story-driven fights where you have an AI partner that can't be given direct orders, they seem like they only have one goal, and that's to make sure Hero doesn't die. So it was lemon squeezy to keep dishing out hard-hitting attacks while the AI kept me in the green. There was only one specific fight that I felt I absolutely had to grind to get past. The third fight before the true final boss has you facing off against these 2 monsters and they both can just wipe your team in one turn. I tried 8 or 10 times to beat these 2 before I looked up that people were typically at level 80 or 90 before fighting this fight, which confused the hell out of me because I was only in the upper 50s around this time. A dominating strategy was to use that magic burst attack I told you Veronica has, but that's not learned until about level 70. So I looked into grinding strategies online, which honestly almost made me want to take a long break from the game. I know that sounds really bad, but I cannot tell you guys how much the idea of grinding bores me. Sitting there killing enemies just to make a number go up with it requiring just enough input to make me have to sit there and press a button, but I also still have to pay some amount of attention. Oh my god, I'd rather be back in the hospital. Thankfully, there's a pretty speedy way to level up in Act 3. Hero, Eric, and Jade will have a pet power by this point called Hallelujah, which causes experience, money, and after-battle rewards to be exponentially increased. And then Hero, Sylvando, and Jade have a pet power called Electrolyte, which has a high chance of swapping out the enemies in your current fight with metal slimes. Metal slimes are a staple of the Dragon Quest series because of their rarity and the ridiculous amount of experience they give you if you manage to kill one. and they're difficult to kill because of their absurd defense and high likelihood to flee the fight, but it's not impossible because of a low health pool. Now, because of Eric's stupid high agility stat, if he's swapped back in once they arrive, he can take action first and use his move Critical Claim, which is always a critical hit, which ignores the defense stat even for metal slimes. So that's one guaranteed kill if Eric is able to act. Plus everyone else's turn. And with the necessary players just blocking and waiting for Pep to activate, I was up to the 90s before I knew it, and I guess it wasn't as egregious here because it was fast, with the characters leveling up 4 or so times after every battle and it being like a little mini puzzle to solve, I guess. I still wish it didn't have to be a thing, but it wasn't as bad as it could have been. If a real challenge is what you crave in your RPGs, then the Definitive Edition has several difficulty modifiers to play with to make your journey more of what you're looking for. I didn't activate any of them, but I'm sure some of you would get a kick out of it. I'm strictly casual, as I have made very clear. Of course, visually the game looks great, nothing to really add on that front. The pre-rendered movies look really cool, even if some of the characters' faces look a little weird to me. Can't quite put my finger on it. But the in-game animated cinematics are really something. I love how action-packed these things are. It keeps my smooth brain enamored the whole way through. They almost make me want to try out that Dragon Quest Dynasty Warriors game, they're so flashy. Now, something that's really neat is the ability to play the entire game in the 3D mode, or as a 16-bit Super Nintendo-inspired adventure with sprites and dialogue boxes for everything. I didn't try that myself, as this footage is from a side quest that's simply in 2D, but I'm sure it'd be really neat. The music was always triumphant and upbeat, making for a great backing track to a grand adventure. The game also just made me smile a whole lot. Dragon Quest has humor to go around. Like when resting in Gallopolis, I got a puff puff from a cute girl who was waiting outside, and then while it was happening, all of a sudden her buff father showed up and started making whatever puff puff noises are. The enemies are all a joy to encounter, such as the greatest monster design anyone could ever hope to create, the Hamwich. Pure brilliance. And I swear, there was a Sonic fan in the localization room for this one.
You're all going straight to hell!
Get a load of this!
What more can I say at this point? Well, probably a whole lot, but I feel like I already covered everything that made an impact on me. If you're like me and have felt the spirit of the RPG tugging on your heart for a while now, well, then here you go. Dragon Quest XI, what a great first step back into the genre. It might be a little more linear than what most veterans are accustomed to, but it was perfect for me. There are always NPCs with pink markers that can point you in the right direction. You can always talk with your party to get an idea of what they think about the current predicament, and navigating the overworld to find treasure and whatnot is very familiar feeling. It feels like any other third-person action game, and that might be a small thing, but it makes me feel at home. Replayability might be on the shorter side of things, seeing as how you can test out all the weapons at the end of your playthrough. If you want to see what a tree can do when it's pumped full of points, then it's super easy to do. The 2D mode is something, sure, but seemingly only for a cool for a few hours kind of thing. The amount of content you're getting is unbelievable. For the third time, you heard me say 70 hours, but that's just the main story. I barely touched optional side quests, crafting ultimate weapons, and the big side story. It's even on the Switch if that's how you like to spend your Saturday evenings. I wouldn't say I've caught the RPG bug or anything, like I'm not planning on jumping into another one for a little while, but I can certainly say I'm not completely disinterested in them like I was. If you think that sounds similar to how you feel about them, I implore you to give this one a shot. You might find even more enjoyment than I did. And if any of you RPG aficionados out there have any recommendations on which I should start chipping away at next, I'm all ears in the comments. But I don't know, man, I really think I might try to go back to Dragon Quest VIII or the Thousand Year Door. They have a lot of nostalgia for me. Also, if you made it this far, I really want to just say thank you for watching my content. I know my video output has been a little slow this year, but I should have an explanation for that ready in a few weeks. Oh, I did forget, this isn't the last turn-based RPG I'm going to be looking at this year. I should probably get to work on that. But anyway, I appreciate you for watching. So thanks for stopping by, and have a great day.